Welcome to the press conference on the Olympiads Paris 13 district in the official selection at the 74th International Film Festival. It's a great pleasure to introduce I'm going to introduce some members of the crew. I'll start at the far end of the table, the producer of the film, Valérie Sherman. On my left, Léa Messius, the assistant scriptwriter. Next to her, Lucie ZHANG, who plays the part of a waitress who's graduated from the Political Science University. And then on the other side of the table, we have Jehnny BETH, the cam girl, Nora. Amber. Not Nora. I'm not mistaken when I say that Makita SAMBA plays the part of Camille. The actress Noémie Merlant. And finally, the director of the film. It's the sixth time he's been here in Cannes. In 2009, he got the Jury Prize for a Prophet. In 2015, the Golden Palm for Dipan. A warm welcome to the scriptwriter and director, Jacques AUDIARD. Jacques, well, we catch our breath. Is it by chance that you shoot a film on desire at the height of the lockdown? In black and white, moreover. It's like an historical, a period film. If you get what I'm saying. How did you... How did you hit upon the graphic novel by Adrien Tominé? Well, I wanted to have to work on a forthcoming script, and I worked, started reading Adrien Tominé, who I didn't know. A friend said, you should read this person, and I did so, and I found it absolutely wonderful. I hunted for someone to adapt the graphic novel, and Céline Sciamma was the first person I talked to about this too. And Céline was shooting her films, so I asked the person who did the adaptation to help me out.
Alors, je vais me calmer d'abord. Allons-y.
On a une première question avec Chad.
First question with Chad. Jason, I beg your pardon.
Hi, Jason Gore from ThatShelf.com in Canada. If you could talk as characters about the translation from the graphic novel of finding ways of being intimate and finding ways of being real as you struggle to decide who you are as characters, as you're changing your occupations and changing your strategies, about what you found as characters from the page to bring to life. And Jacques, if you could talk about working with Céline and the other screenwriters on the story, how much it changed from the source material into what it ended up becoming. So as performers of bringing the characters to life from the page, and as a writer-director of translating from a very different medium into cinema.
Well, I'll give part of the answer and then hand things over to my colleague. It's adapted from a graphic novel. It's actually a comic by Adrien Tominé. And I think that adapting a comic gives rise to special problems. In fact, I don't really remember whether it was tough or not. Do you remember? It was difficult to entwine the three stories. It was hard to turn the characters into the stuff of a film.
De les situer à Paris, dans le 13e
Also, it
arrondissement.
was hard locating them in Paris, in the 13th district. Now, today, we wanted the characters to be typical of young people in France today, and that was the main difficulty, adapting the graphic novel.
Ce sont des jeunes gens.
These are young kids, they're young adults, in fact. They're about 30 years or more. They have lots of diplomas.
Au chômage, un peu comment ils ont du mal à se loger.
They find it difficult to find accommodation, they're unemployed. And I wanted to talk about this middle class, young, well-educated kids who are having trouble finding their way in life.
Souvent les déclassés.
People usually talk about the down and out. These people aren't that at all. They're not down and out.
Est-ce que les comédiens voudraient revenir?
What about the viewpoint of the actors? Do you want to take the floor at this point? I don't really remember the question anymore. Was the question really for us? What was the question? It wasn't for you. Well, there you go. Thank you.
Nous avons une question sur le côté.
We have a question from the side.
Bonjour,
Hello.
Peter Hood,
Peter Hood.
Interfilm Allemagne.
Interfilm Germany.
Une question pour Monsieur
I have a
Audiard.
question for Mr. Audiard.
C'est quoi l'esprit de ces
What is
milieux-là, de
the
cet endroit, de
spirit
cette,
of this place, this
13e,
social class?
comment
What's
c'est-
it like in the 13th district of Paris?
quartier de Paris?
Is it very different from other districts?
Moi, j'ai choisi le 13e
I chose the
arrondissement.
13th district for a very simple reason. I lived there for a long time, and I know the district well. It's one of the districts in Paris that's changed most over the last 10 or 15 years.
Un plan d'urbanisme, il y a une-
There's really been a lot of town planning, there's a typical architecture,
Dans cet arrondissement de Paris que ça se
and this is true only of this district. It's a very concentrated place between the Seine and the upper part of Paris. And there's this area called the Olympiade, where the architecture is absolutely stunning. Welbeck wrote about this area, so it's not an unknown place of Paris.
Ce que j'aime, voilà,
What I really like
c'est un quartier qui
is the fact that
moi,
it's
la
a
modernité de Paris, on en a
district
pas
which
forcément.
depicts the modern era in Paris. I've shot a lot of films in Paris, and it's a difficult city to film.
La perspective
Things are fairly low-lying,
dans le muséal.
and then you end up
Les Olympiades et autour, le 13e,
in
c'est
sort of museum-like areas of Paris, but the 13th district has really emerged. It's quite magnificent. They're all classes of society who are mixed together in that neighborhood, and it seems more real than many other districts of Paris.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Leila Amar de The Independent.
Lamar, The Independent. I have a question for Mr. Audiard and for Lucie as well.
Dans vos films, on dirait que
In your films, we have the impression that you're constantly looking for something.
les réalisateurs ont toujours un style.
A lot of directors have a typical style. You always create a surprise. You produce totally different films each time round. So what interests you in the art of making a film? What are you looking for? And how did you find Lucie ZHANG, who is an unknown actress?
Deuxième nature pour elle de jouer.
It's almost second nature, it seems, to play this character.
Comment ça s'est passé cette relation?
And what was it like working with Mr. Audiard for you? How did you work on the character, which is so beautifully portrayed?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
On s'est rencontrés
We
grâce
met,
à la directrice, la
thanks
distributrice des rôles.
To the casting director, and the first time we met,
On a commencé à travailler.
we got to work right away.
Le travail.
Everything focused on work.
La relation,
The relationship
je dirais que
between the two of us,
du début jusqu'à la fin,
from beginning
que ce
to
soit en amont
end,
du tournage, pendant et même après,
before the shooting, during and after, I had the impression
il veut me laisser vraiment
that Jacques
beaucoup de liberté.
was going to give me considerable freedom. He wanted me to be active rather than passive as an actress. He
Trop concrètement,
didn't depict things in too fine details so that I had enough scope to create and use my imagination.
Ça reste toujours ambigu.
Things always remain ambiguous.
C'est très bien.
Even when he thinks that
Très mauvais.
things are very good or very bad,
Une ambiguïté.
there's always some kind of ambiguity.
S'il fait exprès ou
I
pas.
don't know whether he does that on purpose or not.
Je demanderais aussi aux autres comédiens comment.
I'd like to ask the
leur
other
rencontre a eu lieu
actors what
et
it
comment
was
est-ce que
like
vous avez
working
préparé
with
vos-
Jacques Audiard. How did you
avec Jacques et
prepare
ensemble,
for your
ensuite,
parts,
en tant qu'ensemble.
alone with Jacques and together as a group?
Alors, en fait, moi et Noémie, on avait passé notre...
Noemi and I spent a lot of time together during the lockdown, which is good because our characters speak to each other via computers. We did all our
Et la première chose qu'il nous a dit,
preparation
c'est
that way.
proposez-moi quelque
And
chose.
when we met
Je sors de la
Jacques, he
pièce
said,
et
well,
appelez-moi quand vous êtes
prepare something for me. I'm going to
a-
leave the room and call me when you're ready. So
Mais
we
on
thought this was
travaille
absolutely
quelque chose de
astounding,
merveilleux. Je
and
pense que
we
ça-
tried
c'est
to
à
work on
l'image
something
de-
together, and it
Le
worked.
travail qu'on a fait sur le film, c'est-à-dire que c'était...
We
il nous
worked
demandait
together
toujours de
on the
proposer des
film. He
choses
always
qui
asked
viennent
us
de nous.
to propose
Même,
certain
des idées
things
de dialogue
spontaneously,
qui, finalement,
even
sont
ideas for the
comme ça,
dialogue
toutes
which
les
weren't
scènes,
in the
qu'est-ce que
script
tu
or in the
ferais?
film. He kept saying to us, well, if you were in this situation, what would you say?
Voilà, c'était vraiment beaucoup de détails.
How would you react?
Aussi, beaucoup d'aide.
So he gave us lots of details, he gave us lots of support in terms of choreography, artistic directing. We got a huge amount of support. I think it takes several people to put together a character, and that's what's really rewarding.
C'est ce qui donne la
You're not all alone, and that, I think that lends great depth to the character. Personally, I felt I was receiving very solid support.
Makita, Noémie.
Non, moi je dirais la même
Noémie,
chose que Jehnny.
well, I would like
C'est
to
vraiment
say
le
the same
rapport
thing.
à ces trois femmes, même, je dirais, même si je
He has this fabulous relationship with all three women.
Mais il a quand même une influence sur le parcours de Camille. Voilà, c'est vraiment le rapport
Had
à
a
ces
huge
trois
amount of influence
De
on
travailler,
us,
en
and
fait,
I was able to work on my part thanks to the support from the other
la
actresses.
figure du prof et de
Apart from the fact that we had Camille and this business of being an actor and a teacher. During the casting, well, we were actually all locked down.
J'ai eu du mal
I found it
à
quite
trouver
difficult
le personnage au début, à proposer à
to
Jacques.
figure out the kind of character that I wanted to propose to Jacques.
De ce premier
It was so
confinement,
depressing
et, malgré
to
tout, il fallait que ce soit
go
vivant
through
et
that
drôle.
lockdown.
Et,
We wanted things to be lively and quite funny.
J'ai jamais été autant
Yet at
ultra
the same
connectée avec
time,
le personnage.
I felt very deeply connected with this
Je le
character.
trouve ultra, enfin, je nous trouve tous ultra
In
combatifs,
fact,
en fait, malgré
I think
cette
we're
solitude.
all real combatants. Despite the solitude, we're trying to get to know ourselves better, be closely connected with everyone else and the world. Things had to move fast, and we really had to look to find the right way of portraying things. We worked very intensely over a period of 3 months, and then
Et c'était un peu scindé en deux, en fait. Il y
well,
avait
it was
tout un
divided
travail
into
entre
two.
nous et
We
avec,
did a lot of work amongst ourselves with a person called Stéphanie Chen, who's a choreographer and a coach, and I thought it was really great doing that work. I'd never done such a thing before. So we really managed to espouse the character through our very body, identify in quite a physical way, speak with gestures,
nous, on se touche.
and work on how we would touch each other as different characters. We say a lot through our bodies, and I think that's very important in the film. Then with Jacques, we did a lot of rehearsals.
Moi, au départ,
At the beginning,
avec les répétitions, puisque je me suis toujours trouvé ça barbant.
I always found rehearsing rather boring, but this was not the case at all with Jacques because we had lots of fun. He keeps saying, well, we mustn't get bored, let's have a bit of rest, and it's like a game you play, a game of ping pong. You can afford to make a mistake. That's what's so fantastic when rehearsing with him. There can be accidents, things may not go well, and that in fact is how we went about things. During that phase, we looked for all these very lively details, accidents, clumsy moments, the idea that things were really alive. And we were very fortunate as well, because we were able to see the whole of the film in a theater, all the crew and the actors, even those with very minor roles. We therefore had a really good overview of the film, or at least of the storyline. We weren't necessarily together all the time, and that's very valuable for an actor to see this before you start to shoot, because you never shoot in chronological order, and in this way we could feel truly connected with our character. Perfect. Thank you very much. I have a question for you. When Jacques asked you to work on this film, sent you the script co-written with Céline Sciamma, what was your reaction? What was your concern? In fact, we worked on the basis of this version, which already existed. At the time, it wasn't in Paris, in the 13th district. Things were much more theatrical, and we gave up on that side of the film. And we also really delved into the graphic novels by Tomine to figure out the right characters. Camille was totally invented. And then we had to interweave all these stories, because in the original novel, things were very separate. Were you involved during the rehearsals? Yes, she was there from beginning to end all the time. During the rehearsals, we were able to rewrite certain things together, and even for the actors, it was good for me to be able to write down what the actors were doing and improvising, and then we could recreate the scenes depending on what worked and what didn't. We could really adapt based on the way they played their characters. I have a question for Jacques Audiard. What moves me a great deal in the film, well, I don't know whether this is a biased perception as a journalist, but I have the impression it's like a first film for you. It's as though you were discovering the way of filming, the way of creating images. Did you experience this as a kind of artistic renaissance when shooting the film? Renaissance? You mean I was dead before? No, not at all. No, I understand. Smile.
Non, mais comment j'ai... Comment un film...
How can a film... Well, I have the feeling that I'm very much alive and hard at work. When I finish a film, it's as though I was closing one drawer and then open a new drawer. Of course, there are lots of frustrations and things, and I wanted to make a film quite quickly and on a fairly low budget. For that reason, things are quite light-hearted. These are things you sense in the film. Yes, and this is exactly what I was wanting to do. It's as though the first film was... all my films are like a first film. I often feel I'd like to create a first film based on a genre I've already used. And that's the way I've made my last few films. I have a question for the producer, Valérie Sherman, who I know well. I'd like to know how you go from an animated film to a fictional film. We've been working together for a long time now. He asked me whether I would be interested in doing this. I thought matters over, and I said yes. He's very courageous, in fact, launching the height of the pandemic into this kind of a film. Well, Jacques wanted to shoot things quite quickly. Right at the outset, right at the beginning, Jacques wanted to shoot the film quite quickly in just a couple of weeks. As you have seen, the preparation took a very long time, including that of the actors. It took about 3 months, and we were able to shoot the film in just 6 weeks. And that enabled us to work from beginning to end without being stopped by COVID. And it galvanized us because things went fast. We saw the actors every evening in the rushes, and it was great. Doing this kind of a film is incredibly different, of course. Jacques works a huge amount all the time. And that galvanizes everyone else, even the crew, the team, and it's a great pleasure to work with a director like that. I love it when people talk about me.
Des questions.
Any questions in the room?
Jacques, souvent pour les premiers films,
Jacques,
on parle de derniers
we
films,
were
on va
talking
revenir sur
about
votre premier
first
film.
films. Let's talk
On
about your
tourne
first films
des
now.
histoires sur ses contemporains, sur ses pairs, des jeunes.
Stories are
Vous avez fait le
young
contraire,
people,
vous êtes
peers,
penché sur
or on the contrary, there are
Maintenant,
older
25 ans plus
characters.
tard, vous
Now,
revenez
25 years
sur la
later,
jeunesse.
you're reverting to youth.
Qu'est-ce qui vous a attiré?
What attracts you to this topic?
Alors, si-
Well,
si
first
je
of
prends
all,
sur Tomine, c'est une mauvaise
yes,
réponse.
Tomine.
Qu'est-ce qui a désigné Tomine à mon attention?
Why did I choose Tomine? What attracted me to him? Well,
J'avais envie de.
I really wanted,
Enfin, je ne sais pas comment dire ça.
I don't know how I can
Oui, j'avais envie de
put
jeunesse.
this. Yes, I wanted to portray young people.
Non, j'avais envie effectivement de jeunesse, j'avais envie de visiter.
I wanted to see women's faces.
Où c'est palpitant, c'est un peu
I
palpitant.
wanted things to be quite palpitating.
J'ai fait un western avant.
I did a western before that, which was quite artificial. So I wanted to do the exact opposite this time round, even if I can stand back from the situation. So yes, I really wanted to see bodies, faces, young people.
Merci.
Thank you.
Pour les comédiens,
The
comment est-ce que
actors.
vous avez trouvé vos personnages? Pas trouvé, mais
How
est-ce que
did you
vous avez
find your
identifié?
characters?
Est-ce qu'au
How did you
contraire, vous
manage
avez
to
des
identify
problèmes
with your
ou
characters? Was it easy, or did you have problems, difficulties?
qui ne correspondaient pas, qui ne
Did you
vous allaient
feel
pas?
certain aspects of your character didn't really match the person you really are?
Pour mon personnage, Émilie,
My character,
j'ai eu
Emily,
beaucoup de mal pendant,
well, I found it very difficult.
comme ils disent, 3 mois de
It
répétition.
took me 3 months
C'était
of
comme,
rehearsals.
peut-être que je vais exagérer, mais c'était comme
Maybe I'm
3 mois
exaggerating,
de
but
crise existentielle et de
there was
déchirement
an
parce que
existential
c'était
crisis for almost 3 months because this character
composé de moi.
is the total opposite of the person I am, my character, my personality,
Parce que
and
je
I
croyais qu'on me
couldn't come to
choisissait
grips with this.
parce
I thought I was being chosen as an actress because I resembled the character. Thanks to Jacques, I finally understood, but after a long time, that that was not the case at all. I had to understand that I needed to create the character,
Pour ça, il faut que j'abandonne.
and I had to sort of
Et donc, avec ce
stop being the
personnage,
person I am in order to slip into this other character. It was difficult for me. I hated the character at one point in time. I thought to myself, why is everything that resembles me bad and everything that resembles that character good? You sort of feel a bit lost. You somehow can't find where the values lie anymore. And then I finally understood. Things fell into place. I had a similar experience. Jacques said to me,
C'est pas toi.
Amber's not you.
Et du coup, ça m'a
And that helped me no end, because I thought, oh yeah, he's right. You often try to project yourself in the character. Obviously, I'm very different from Amber.
en travaillant.
But when you go about your work, you end up finding the real character, and that's how you tend to work with Jacques.
Et les accessoires que j'avais.
And also, I had lots of accessories to help me.
Non, moi j'ai ressenti une grande ressemblance.
I felt that there was a strong resemblance between me and my character. This sounds pretentious, but maybe between me and Jacques.
Et j'avoue, c'était
And I must admit
pas mal d'observer.
that I tried to observe things. And
Dialogue tout le temps, en tout cas, ça c'est sûr.
there was an ongoing dialogue all the time.
Observation et de réflexion.
So I tried to watch how things were being done, talk them over with
Tournez
him.
la question et vous posez la question.
Perhaps I would like to ask a different question.
Souffre à deux époques de
Your
sa vie, de
character
l'abus sexuel, de
suffers from
harcèlement
sexual harassment and abuse twice in his life. Her life. How do you explain this?
Elle est censée avoir souffert vraiment qu'une fois.
Well, she should only have suffered just once? Sorry,
Oui,
Une histoire sexuelle difficile.
avec l'oncle,
Oui, oui.
with my uncle. You mean that?
c'était consenti. Hein.
Well, I don't know. It was consensual.
Oui, pour nous, c'était consenti.
For us, it was consensual.
Mais du coup, c'était quoi la question?
But what was your question? Ah, repeated harassment. I think probably the character you portray, Camille, has helped you in that respect. That reconciles me with the situation. I say, thank you for your gentleness, thank you for listening to me. I feel totally reconciled with that man. Okay, he was an uncle, but we did
C'est surtout que oui, avec lui, je avais avec Camille,
reach some kind of reconciliation.
que en fait, son désir
In
n'est pas
fact,
là. Et c'est surtout avec la rencontre par le virtuel, puisque dans le réel,
there's a sort of a virtual encounter here.
il
Nora,
y a un truc qui
for
est
me,
bloqué. C'est là où
well, something's blocked in her.
beaucoup, j'ai senti beaucoup de connexion avec
That's
elle.
why I felt deeply connected with her. She doesn't live life at the same pace as others. She goes a bit faster than I do. I, of course, had to speed up to reach her pace, and that was very interesting to work on in the course of the film. Ah, I can't remember what I wanted to say now.
Oui, elle est bloquée.
Yes, she's sort of blocked. She has a block with reality despite the attempts she makes. And she only manages to connect with Amber. Everything is virtual. That speaks reams about our times.
Il y a énormément de douceur. Moi,
There's huge gentleness, I think, in this love story with Amber. It's quite magnificent. She really overwhelms me. She bowls me over. I haven't answered your question, but I guess that doesn't matter. Well, I find her absolutely flabbergasting, too. I have a question for the two of you. How did you create this character which resembles you yet doesn't resemble you? How did you reach this total merging at the end of the film? When Christelle, the casting director, called me, she talked about a resemblance with Noémie, and I was very flattered. I said, oh, yeah, great.
Non, on a travaillé avec les perruques. Je pense
We worked with wigs.
Dès qu'on mettait les perruques sur les
As soon as we put on a wig, when we tried the first costumes, we took some selfies, and we thought it looked really good. We felt that, yes, this really enhanced the gaze, the looks. And I don't know. The accessories, everything helped us to really start believing in things. The necklaces, well, of course, then we're just making a film, obviously. We found ways of creating this sort of mirror image. But then we didn't try to imitate each other because they are different characters. They don't have the same tempo. They don't have the same pace.
C'est du maquillage et de la perruque.
It's all in the makeup and the wigs.
Du jeu d'acteur,
the actual acting? Yes, but we didn't really try to act in the same way, if that's what you're trying to get at.
Oui, et pourtant il y a une ressemblance.
Yet there is a resemblance, yes.
Je ne sais pas.
I agree with what has just been said. We totally agree with each other.
Jacques, les personnages qui ne sont
Jacques,
pas amoureux que celles qui les aiment.
Characters and things can be quite comic or tragic in terms of the love they feel for each other. You can deal with that in a very tragic or comic way. What did you decide to focus on? The comic side of things? I don't know. It's sort of, there's a lot of light bantering in the film. I love someone who doesn't love me. It's like René Girard. What I really liked was that the characters, all the characters, are mistaken about themselves, in fact, at the beginning. The character played by Camille, she says, well, I'm totally independent, but the character ends up falling in love. Emily looks like a real punk, and then she realizes this is just a facade and it doesn't work. Nora thought she loved men, and she, thanks to Camille, she tries to come to grips with the situation. The character, Amber, is the character that is most present in the film. She's the person who makes everyone change. And I think it's quite amusing to see this construction in the film. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? We have another question at the front, I think.
Hello again. I'll try again for a question for the cast. I think it's fair to say that this film has elements of classic French cinema, Nouvelle Vague even with the black and white, but you would not have seen your faces and you would not have seen your relationships in these films at that time. I'm wondering if you can talk about bringing to life the new France, about what it means to be a Parisian in this cinema, bringing a very modern aesthetic to something which is very much, in many ways, classic love stories. So beautiful.
Qui veut répondre à cette question?
Who wants to answer that question? A member of the cast? Léa?
C'est comment c'est vrai que j'ai du mal à résumer la question.
It's hard to sum things up.
C'est une histoire, enfin, qu'on aurait pu voir.
This is a story
Qui pourrait avoir été traitée
that
par,
could have been dealt with by the new wave,
donner un visage
but
contemporain.
you give it a very contemporary dimension.
Non, mais je voulais juste dire par rapport au personnage
In
d'Amber,
terms of the character,
personnellement, j'ai pas
Amber,
l'impression
personally
d'avoir vu,
speaking, I don't have the
un personnage
impression
comme ça dans le
I've
cinéma.
ever seen a character like that in the cinema,
C'est une travailleuse du sexe,
because
donc,
she's a
vraiment,
sex worker, but we were very careful.
du trauma par rapport à son travail.
We didn't want things to
Je sais pas comment-
focus too heavily on her work, on her trade.
Elle fait ça, mais
She does that, but we don't make the situation overly dramatic. And I thought that was really wonderful to play that part without trying to make things overly psychological in terms of her work. We didn't want things to be necessarily negative in terms of her sexual freedom. I found that a very modern approach, personally speaking. I've never seen that kind of thing in the cinema.
Si vous vouliez vous approcher,
Pardon, excusez-moi. Oui, ce qui attacherait le film à la modernité, je crois que
The film is very modern because
transsocial, transculturel.
it is transcultural, trans-ethnic, trans-social. In Truffaut, you could have a person who's in love, who faints, but you wouldn't have a Chinese person, a black person, and we're always rather embarrassed with that kind of thing. But this, what I wanted to do was to depict a middle class we know, kids who have fabulous diplomas. I wanted to show these young middle-class kids, and that was the whole purpose of the film. That's why it's been shot in the Olympiade. The Olympiade is a part of Paris where you have people from all walks of life and all ethnic groups.
Mais dans votre cinéma, il a souvent été.
In your cinema, that's often been the case.
Si vous appuyez sur le bouton, ça va être insupportable. Non, ouais, c'est vrai que le
Yes, because I wanted to do things which were slightly different.
moi, je travaille avec des, je sais pas, des.
I love to work with people I don't necessarily understand, people from different backgrounds. It's interesting to work with different faces, different people. I sometimes feel that maybe I should work with people who I don't understand, who I don't know at all. I want to work with people who I don't know. I want to do something that's really different. That's what interests me most.
On est dans la reproduction du même, mais c'est.
If you're just doing the same thing over and over, forget it. It becomes very circumscribed.
Non, mais on me contredit ou pas? Je suis seul à
Are
penser.
you contradicting me? No, not at all.
J'étais ravi de vous rencontrer.
Well, I was very pleased to meet you,
Nous étions ravis de vous recevoir.
and we were pleased to welcome you here. Thank you very much indeed.